Rising Strong by Brene Brown. Alright guys, we're finally on our binge. Our Brene Brown bibliography binge with breaks. We take alliteration very seriously with this channel from time to time. Now, what we're doing is we're going over every one of her books that I haven't reviewed yet. I'm going to review the entirety of her bibliography. Every other book that I have that I'm reviewing is going to be a Brene Brown book until we're done. So it's a Brene Brown bibliography binge with breaks. I love Brown's work because it somehow gently picks apart the way the human condition functions in a fast-moving 21st century society. Sugar! I love her storytelling. This lady knows how to she knows how to tell a story. Because as she says, stories are data with a soul. And she has this charm to her writing, and it wraps them up in this very, universal way that despite how hard it could be for us as consumers to discuss many of the topics she covers, I feel like they're very easy to digest, and I feel like it's very hard for an author to easily deliver them. As easily and powerfully and comprehensively as she does. She's written books mainly about shame, courage, empathy, and vulnerability. And what separates this one from the rest? If it's not that different, is it at least good? I mean, it has to be good. Come on, man. It's Brene Brown. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Samuel, and I want to make self-growth normal. If you want to make self-growth normal, because I don't want to do it alone, then make sure to smash that like button. Brown doesn't believe that faith and reason are natural enemies, and that our desire for certainty and to be right have led to this false dichotomy. We all want to be shown and seen, but in order to do that, we all have to rise and fall. Rising Strong, she says, doesn't offer a solution or a recipe or step-by-step guidance. It presents a theory grounded in data that men and women experience as they work to rise after falling. She's seen this take 20 minutes. She's seen it take 20 years. When I heard this, I don't know, I had a feeling she would be on her A game for this book, but I think that I was a little bit disappointed. It seemed for a second that Rising Strong would be where her experience in social work and her experience in data analysis and her experience in teaching all kind of met in the middle. The thing is, I really liked this book, but I didn't like it for the reason that I wanted to. I'm not sure exactly why that matters to me, probably because I'm not used to it with her other books. Something tells me if I never checked out any other Brene Brown books, I may have liked it more. In the chapter Civilization Stops at the Waterline, she talks about the experience she, her husband Steve, and their kids had at the Colorado River Reservoir, Lake Travis in Texas. Apparently it's a really steep drop off and there are no shorelines. I think the deepest point is 210 feet. She told this story in her Call to Courage Netflix special a couple of years ago. I think she's told it in a couple other books, but Brown has the tendency to occasionally repeat herself with stories. In some books like this one, she will literally tell more in depth than others. Others will be the same, like that Roosevelt speech that she quoted in the beginning of Daring Greatly. Ugh, Sugar, your breath smells like fish. But I don't know why she would do any of these things for any reason other than emphasis. Apparently, the process of rising strong consists of 3 parts: the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution. This one part stood out about owning our own stories. The Latin root of the word integrate is integrare, which means to make whole. Integrating is the engine that moves us through the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution, and the goal of these processes is to make ourselves whole. Participants spoke about the importance of feeling authentic, genuine, and whole, rather than always compartmentalizing their lives, or hiding parts of themselves, or editing their stories. Boy, am I guilty of these last 3 things. She said in the next chapter that while some clinicians and researchers argue that you can change your life by changing your thoughts and your behaviors, she has seen in her research that real transformation doesn't happen unless they're all addressed as equally important parts of the whole. Listening to this chapter helped me realize that many fragments of this book are much more on the scientific, logical side of things than others of hers, given the way she explained that psychologically we're not wired to have the best reactions to uncomfortable situations. Also, how the way we stockpile a bunch of data on top of what we don't want to confront inside affects not only our mental health, but our physical health. And yet there's still that personal touch that Brene Brown is known for. When it comes to my everyday life on dry land, I struggle with being mindful. My mind is normally 3 miles ahead of my body, worrying about what comes next, or jumping a curb 3 streets behind me looking for the person who didn't give me the friendly driver's wave when I let them pull in front of me. Living this way makes driving to the grocery store exhausting. For a much more logical and hyper-analytical, is that the word? Hyper-analytical? Explanation of how we believe it's best to see A, B, C, and then Z, and then just assume that you understand the whole alphabet from there. This is a story we tell ourselves, jumping to conclusions, lies honestly told. It's a very human thing to do. Our brains reward us for conspiring and confabulation, which by the way can be kind of destructive to imagination and definitely relationships, I would check out The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. There's this one experience she was talking about that she had like before she was gonna speak one day that drove her insane, and she became completely obsessed with it. She asked this question to like 40 different people. She also asked her therapist and her husband. She wanted to hear what they had to say, but like the question is, do you think people are doing the best they can? That's a very powerful question. What do you guys think? Please let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious. My favorite answer was her husband's. He says that to believe everyone does allows him to live a better, more positive life. Here's another section that stood out from the same chapter. You know the irony about speaking fees? When I do something for a full fee, people are respectful and professional. When I do something pro bono because I care about the cause, people are respectful and professional. When I do something because I feel pushed, pressured, guilt-tripped, or shamed into it, I expect people to be appreciative and to be respectful and professional. Yes, 90% of the time, they are none of the above. This is the question. How can we expect people to put value on our work when we don't value ourselves enough to set and hold uncomfortable boundaries? There's so much in the following chapter, The Brave and Brokenhearted, about addiction. When she said that no matter who you are somehow affected by someone who has or has had addiction issues in the past. I mean, you can't really dispute that. Someone you are very close to has probably been very heavily affected by addiction. Maybe him or herself or by others. And she integrated, right, with the process of rising strong and writing down what am I telling myself right now while I'm grieving and coming to terms with what's making me uncomfortable. The awareness of that is just, I feel like it's not easy to put into words how powerful it can be, but sitting down and focusing on it really brings like a refreshing sort of clarity to your emotional bandwidth that you're going to try it and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, why did I not start doing this sooner? Well, now you have it. And these are things that like, maybe they come to mind at some point, but we forget them or we disregard them. When's the last time you felt like your heart was being shattered or there was just this like kerplunk feeling in your gut and you wrote down what you're telling yourself? Very, very powerful stuff, Brene Brown. Again, there's a lot of overlooked stuff in this book, and that maybe isn't in her other books, or maybe it is, but it's overlooked in like a different way. Aside from, again, her storytelling, this book is, again, it's more like cerebral and logical. If I hadn't said before, if you know my videos, you know on this channel how much I like to talk about money and finance and business and sales, but it gave me a very much needed break to just sit down and listen to or read some Brene Brown. After hearing the chapter about Mima's experience growing up in need primarily, rather than helping those in need primarily, and that story being surrounded by stories about interactions that Brene Brown had with the homeless, and what she thought of those interactions and reflections upon, like, is it because of my privilege that I reacted this way? I came to a realization that I could totally understand, really, why critics would say that too much of this book focuses on her own experiences, if not the typical, the author talks too much about herself. That really hit me when I finally got to this chapter. I honestly don't remember the last book of hers. I remember listening to that read more like a memoir than the rest, but I mean, if you can discard it and you're a sucker for good storytelling, I certainly am. It may not, entirely butcher your reading or listening experience. Let's take a look at some bad reviews though and see what they say. Do I agree with them? There were a lot of good reviews though, but it was rare that I found something in the middle. Again, I will say that a lot of this book it hinged upon personal storytelling of people she's like interviewed in her research and on our podcast, which was a little disappointing because the first few minutes highlight what to expect from the book, which is that. There may be micro examples, if you will, scattered across the stories, like it reminds me of that one song by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young where the lyrics go and then she recites the lyrics and explains how they pertain to the story. Or in her one book, this author describes X or Y and how that pertains to the story. But it's heavily based on personal storytelling. The reason I'm bringing this all up is that quite a few negative reviews, despite the fact that, I don't know, I feel like most of this review I praised the book. They mentioned that it really fully dodged the act of rising strong from tough situations, which again, this book was at least supposed to be about giving the intro. A book that may have hit this nail harder on the head, I'd propose, is a similar author to Brene Brown, maybe a tad more comedic and accessible, maybe a tad less intellectual or cerebral, which there's nothing wrong with. Didn't see that coming by Rachel Hollis. Newt said in a one-star interview that the overzealous performance came across as overly genuine Overly genuine? What does that mean? I didn't know something could be too genuine. C-list acting. Coupled with vocab like badassery and the emotional laws of physics. On the emotional laws of physics, what does that even mean? But badassery is only really mentioned in like one section, and the author is quick to justify her use of it and what it means to her. First acknowledging that it's not the most like intelligent or a traditional word in her field of work. Overall, from 30,000 feet up, this is it's a little bit more of a faulty Brene Brown book. I don't think this should mean that much because I like to think that I got a lot out of it. In retrospect, I found it a little bit scattered compared to other ones that she's written. It wasn't like there was that much of a single rabbit she was trying to catch. And maybe this was her trying to like expand her subject matter that she kind of covers. But the main reason that this wasn't my favorite is that it really doesn't seem like she was able to execute its mission statement or what have you, as well as others I'm familiar with. My favorite of hers is still The Power of Vulnerability, if I haven't said that yet, but I'm gonna keep navigating my way through her bibliography because, well, it is a Brene Brown bibliography binge with breaks. Quotes. Complaining is okay as long as we piss and moan with a little perspective. I think to sell people an easy fix for pain is the worst kind of snake oil. Creativity is the ability to connect the seemingly unconnected. It often just takes a single brave person to change the trajectory of a family or any system for that matter. We don't compare when we feel good about ourselves, we look for the good in others. When you look away from a homeless person, you diminish their humanity and your own. I've learned enough about privilege to know that we are at our most dangerous when we think we know everything there is to know about it. Look behind an act of violence from bullying to terrorism and you'll often find a frantic attempt to escape powerlessness. Genetics load the gun and environment pulls the trigger. Direction 1. I recommend this book for people who struggle daily with the stories they tell themselves. The story you tell yourself and SFDs, something first drafts. It rhymes, I'm not gonna say it, but it rhymes with spitty, if that's even a word. For me, those were the biggest takeaways that could be applied. Direction 2. If you like this book, you might like Daring Greatly and Braving the Wilderness. Again, my favorite remains The Power of Vulnerability. If you're not the biggest fan of her books, please do not hesitate to at least check out her speaking. You may also like Didn't See That Coming and potentially Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. Rising Strong by Brene Brown. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If you guys buy anything through the links in the description, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far in my videos and they don't subscribe. But if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop a new video, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere and I will see you then.